Hi everybody, this is Mahadeva the OG Thunder Wizard. And I know it's the middle of the night everywhere, but I was inspired by a comment somebody left on the channel, and I thought I would share my thoughts about it. It's worth discussing, worth meditating on. Most important thing for me is to worry about things that I have direct control over. The quality of my life. That's really the only thing I have any measure of control over. I don't have any control over a whole hell of a lot else. And so when it comes to the afterlife, I believe that the quality of our life right now will have a strong impact on our afterlife. Just like anything else, if you wait around to see what happens, you get what you get. But at least if you do what you can, then you can say that to yourself. You say, I've done my part. Everything else out of my control. So there was a comment left on the channel, which I'm going to take a look at here, which said, this was in response to my video, The Lie of Karma and Reincarnation, Freedom from Religion. Now, that was a long time ago. I don't remember what I said. And, I talk for 2 hours or whatever it is, and I take questions. So there's so many things I could say. And people just drop comments, like I know the context of they're talking about. So I have to guess. But what I think I probably said. But this person leaves a good comment, and I have some growing to do, and one of them is I tend to respond before I've read somebody's complete statement or question. And so I did that in this case because this person started off as though they were wanting to disagree with me about whatever it was that I said. Now, I assume that what I said in the video that they're responding to was that I don't believe that karma is the result of the universe doing things to you. I don't believe that future lives that you experience are a result of mistakes or you're being punished or et cetera, et cetera. Now, why do I believe that? First and foremost, because it doesn't make sense to me. I can't imagine the universe functioning that way. Because being a human being is such an incredible privilege. Especially now, that I'm back practicing my energy practice again, and I'm really, really aware of what a tremendous gift it is. And I'm really aware of how easy it is for us to change things about ourselves. We can change our health, we can change our outlook, we can change, just everything from your body. You want to look different, go to the gym. You want to learn something, there's so many ways that you can learn different things. And most people, I have to say, most people that complain about their life have tools that they can use to change things. And there are some people that don't have that ability. I think of, what's his name? Stephen Hawking, the genius who recently passed away. That guy had something to complain about. And from what I understand, he didn't complain about his life to anybody. And he was able to still survived for years and years and years, and he was very successful, and he's benefited science, and he seemed to have a real zest for life. That guy had something to complain about. Most of us that complain don't have a whole hell of a lot to complain about. And the things that we do experience, we do have tools we can use to change. 90-day challenge. We have tools to change things so that our life can get better. So my belief about the universe is completely focused on how does this make my life better? And the idea that being human, first off, is some kind of punishment. I mean, right there, you're just screwed. That's it. You're not going to accomplish anything with that. As soon as you think that, you're already trapped in some box, in some matrix, and it's over. I choose to believe that life in human form is this amazing video game. And if you play the game right, and if you have first the basic assumption of how this video game works, then there's no limit, literally no limit to what you can accomplish and experience. It's really just your choices, what you choose to limit. And it starts with your assumption. If you assume you're here because you've been punished, then that's going to determine the rest of your existence. And listen, I'm talking from experience. I came from a pretty rough childhood. I went through some stuff I wouldn't wish on anybody. Now, I'm not the only person that had a rough childhood, so I'm nothing special in that regard. But I'm thinking about people that I've known since, birth almost. And the assumptions that they have about life, if you continue with those assumptions, it creates absolute hell. You've heard me talk about my brother. I don't know where he's at. I don't even know if he's alive. But last I heard, he was homeless and sick and miserable. He and I grew up in the same home. I made different choices. I took different actions. And I had different fundamental beliefs that I chose to assume about the universe, and I took action on those beliefs, whereas if you were to talk to him, everything was against him. And he is where he is. I don't know where he is. Maybe he's got his life together. I hope so. I hope he's happy and healthy. I wish no harm on him whatsoever. But from what I remember, my life turned out differently. And I had the same challenges and problems he had. So the assumptions that you make about this life have everything to do with how your life goes. And this has to do with the afterlife. So what people believe about the afterlife has everything to do about what they believe about themselves. What you believe about politics, again, I've said it before, there's people out there that, their experience right now is just simply they don't like what they're being told, so they're just going to not accept it. Period. I don't like it, so therefore it's not true. And that shows me that they feel like victims. It shows me their level of emotional, psychological, and spiritual development, because they can't see the world except everything is out to get them. And I don't see it that way. I believe that this universe, and the more that I put these things into practice, 90-day challenge, the more that I put these things into practice, the world responds to me in an amazing way. I'm not perfect. I still have things to work through. I still have challenges like everybody else. So that's what I'm talking about when I talk about karma is not a punishment, it is a choice. And whatever you've experienced in this life, whatever the universe seems to have given you, was your choice. You chose to upload your reality this way. Now the question is, what are you going to do to change it? You don't like it? I understand. What are you going to do to change it? If you're not going to change it, I don't see the point in complaining. And I don't see the point in worrying about things I don't have any control over. I have control over some things. And when I take action on the things I have control over, or even some control over, my life goes really, really amazingly well. So I believe in this video, The Lie of Karma and Reincarnation, I believe that's what I was talking about. So this person responds and says, again, without giving me any context about what exactly they're talking about, which is really frustrating. This person says, what you say is true, but only half. Now, that put me on the defensive. Now, having read it a few times, I realize that this person is saying the same thing I am, but just because they had to come at it from, telling me I only had half the truth and they're going to tell me the other half, I'm already put on the defensive. because I've made a whole video about it. This person says, what you say is true, but only half, because when you let go of the body, this discriminating mind no longer exists. Now, that's as far as I got. So what I heard is this person saying is that when you die, you no longer have choice. And so right there, I didn't want to read any further because I completely disagree with it. But she goes, I think it's a she. I don't know, maybe it's a he. This person goes on to say, that is, even in this life, when you had the mind to say to yourself that you do not want to reborn, this no request is still kind of a request that automatically makes the tendency to want to manifest again. Now, that's exactly what I've been saying, and I'm sure I said it in that video. That if you are somebody that says, I refuse, I am not going to reincarnate, that is a guarantee that you will. Guarantee. The person who's not going to come back is the person who can honestly say, sure, I come back. Yeah, why not? That person is going to be given the opportunity because there's obviously nothing left for them to learn. They've learned everything. They have experienced everything. They've fulfilled all of their desires. So what I'm saying is that desire draws you back. So when I say that you make the conscious decision to come back, maybe I don't mean it in the same way that you have the same kind of brain and you think the same way. Obviously, this brain and this body is here in this three-dimensional reality. So there's obviously going to be some difference in terms of how you make decisions. But I still believe that you have total control over the decisions you make. So this person, I think, just wants to argue semantics with me, or maybe didn't understand. And I completely agree. When you say that I refuse to come back, that is a request that brings you back without fail. It's no coincidence, I'm reading again, it's no coincidence that all spiritual teachings say that you have to bring yourself to a state of balance and get rid of desires. Now, right there, I have a problem with that language. Getting rid of desires means that desires are these problems. And this is the New Age kind of thinking, which is found in a lot of religion, which is if you have desires, ooh, that's bad. If you're spiritual, you have no desires. And I think that's pure nonsense. Your soul is a desire machine. Your soul has desires. Being alive is a desire. Consciousness. So it's the idea of being conscious doesn't mean you have no desires. So I have a real problem with that. That you have to get rid of your desires. You have to free yourself from your desires. That is a guarantee. The desire to get rid of desires is a guarantee you'll come back. Because the truth is that the whole point, when you reach your highest evolution, you're going to have fun here. You're going to give yourself everything you've ever wanted. If you are at a high state of consciousness, you'll realize that a lot of the things you thought you wanted really aren't all that satisfying, and you'll lose the desire for those things, but you'll desire something else. You'll desire love. You'll desire healing. You'll desire, beauty. You'll desire nature. There's nothing more sacred for me, more spiritual, than being in nature. And I believe that's because it's a way for the universe to think about it. Look at how beautiful life is. On this planet, there are other planets that they have their stark beauty, but for Mars, there's not a whole hell of a lot to look at on Mars. It's kind of, go to Venus. There's not a whole hell of a lot to look at. It's kind of boring. But here on Earth, we've got these plants with different colors and these beautiful trees, and we've got these oceans and these rivers and these birds. Birds. They fly around and they make these really wonderful noises, and it's just, they fly through the air. That's not nothing. To experience that, to be in the three-dimensional world, to experience all those sights and sounds and smells and tastes and sensations, we forget about all that. I just had some food. I've got some tea right in front of me. I only have 2 tea bags in case anybody's wondering. it's I gotta heat that up. Um, I can enjoy all of these things, and so we are filled with desire. So I have a strong aversion to that kind of language. It shows me a denial, a desire to escape one's pain. Person goes on to say that all spiritual teachings that say that you have to bring yourself to a state of balance to get rid of desires. Bring yourself to a state of balance so that you can fulfill all of your true desires. Doesn't that sound like a lot more fun? I would much rather live in that video game than the one where you have to get rid of your desires. I'm in balance now. I don't have any desires. How boring. That doesn't sound like anything I want. And then person goes on to say, because I hate this life actually means I want another. And that's true. Because when you say you hate this life, what you're really saying is, I'm in pain and I haven't gotten what I wanted. And so I'm just going to take my ball and go home. I don't want to come back. It's too painful. The pain is because you haven't gotten your desires. And that's where people start thinking about, well, if I can get rid of my desires, I'll get rid of my pain. So I have a problem with that. So I responded. And I said, you state your belief as fact, which was that first sentence I found so, which is ironic because I do the very same thing. What you say is true, but only half, because, and then they're going to give you, their opinion as though it's 100% fact. And let's talk about that for a second. Here's the reality of it. Like I said, for me, beliefs, if I don't have experience in them, and there are things that I do have experience in, and I can say, based on my experience, I know this to be true. And maybe you haven't had that experience yet, but take my word for it, I have. I do that as well. But when it comes to things that I don't have any memory, that I can't for sure remember, the best I can say is, this is my belief and here's why I believe it. Even if it's because I had a vision or a dream or an out-of-body experience or a near-death experience. Even after that, somebody can very easily say, well, yeah, you had this near-death experience and you left your body and saw this, that, and the other thing, but there's no way to know that that wasn't your own unconscious. There's no way to know that. The only way that you could, and even then you can't even prove that. A really good piece of evidence would be if somebody were to die, their body would rot, their bones would, turn to dust. And if they were able to magically re-manifest their body and come back from the dead and then talk about it, then we might have somebody, who has some experience to talk about it. But the truth is, everybody who dies, they physically don't come back in that same body anyway. So we really can't say we know. If you feel inside, you believe, but nobody can say that. Because this person is going to go on to say later on that the reason they know this is because they saw it in their meditations. But that brings up a whole other subject which we're going to talk about. I said, you state your belief as fact. I guess I do also, but you have an assumption that I don't share. It's not about getting rid of desire. It's about fulfilling desires. So I would say that you are I would say that you are half right. We choose to come back because we want to fulfill our desires. And then I went on to say, your belief makes you a victim of the universe. My belief makes you a creator of it. Looking back on it now, that's not exactly true because this person and I are pretty close. Not exact, but we're pretty close in our beliefs. This person comes back and says, sorry if I was insulting to you because that was not my intention at all. Things I speak from are only coming from my experience. Which the best way to do that is to say in my experience. Again, I don't do that all the time either. But if you're trying to have a dialogue with somebody, especially if you're trolling somebody's channel, bear in mind, this person's trolling my channel and then dumping their opinion. That's why I say, go make your own videos. You got a different opinion, go make your own videos. But this person says, yes, it's true that we are creators, not victims. But what I'm trying to say is, even now, if I think that I don't want to reborn again when I leave the body, and if I have left some desire to do something or fulfill something, I will go by tendency. So now we're just getting into semantics, because this person either didn't watch the whole video or didn't understand it, because that's basically what I say. You come back to fulfill a desire. You can call it a tendency. I could care less. It means the same thing. And then tries to tell me what karma means. I will go by impressions and will be reborn again, and that is what is referred to as karma. Anyway, I go back and forth on this, and I make the argument that karma is the result. It's not a tendency. That word makes it sound like you're sort of pulled towards something against your will. It's your tendency. Like, for instance, it's my tendency to not finish reading people's comments because I tend to react. I tend to look for, this is all happening on an unconscious level because I've learned to cut to the chase very quickly. And I'm usually pretty good at it. But somebody will give you their assumption within the first couple of sentences. And once you've read the first couple of sentences, no matter how long it is, you already know the gist of what they're going to say. It's my tendency to respond to the first couple of sentences of what somebody says. And that's something I'm working on. I'm actually putting time and effort to read whole comments now and be more patient. So a tendency is something that happens when you don't have a lot of control over it. I have a problem with that. I don't like that idea. I don't like that idea that after you die, you're just pulled by your tendencies. I much prefer the idea, and based on my experience, because I have some experience as well, my experience tells me something different. So this person comes back and says something which I think is really worth discussing, which is this. This person, and again, this could be a language thing, because I believe this person comes from the Baltic or from Russia or something. And so, language tends to, some things get lost in translation, especially when you're writing. Well, this person is saying, I'm not believing or disbelieving anything. I'm not guessing or hoping. It is just that I am experiencing it. Now, right there, I'm put off. Because if you were talking about something else, that you have experience with, like climbing mountains. I've never climbed a mountain. And I start talking about what it's like to climb a mountain. The person says, well, listen, I'm talking about my experience. I've climbed mountains before. This person has not died and come back. And so for them to say that they're not guessing, that means that they have the truth, and they're going to, right there, I'm put off, and I don't even want to listen to anything else you have to say. Because you haven't proven to me that you have unmistakable experience. Nobody does in this regard. When it comes to the afterlife, nobody has unmistakable experience. People, maybe they've had a near-death experience and they were dead for, 3 hours. Well, they might have more to talk about. They might have more weight behind what they say, but they still can't prove it either. There's no evidence that proves that they didn't have a dream or some kind of experience at the deepest levels of their mind. It could be the release of DMT as the body's going through a death experience. There's no way to prove that. But this person goes on to say, in time when I was meditating for long periods of time. So this person is saying, this isn't my opinion, I know it for a fact because I meditated. But that brings up a different experience. So here's what this person believes based on their meditative experience. I remember what is before I came here in this body, before, the English is different, so I'm restating the English a little better. I remember what it is before I came here in this body, before I manifested. There is only a state of vacuum. There is no mind there, it is only consciousness. The question is how conscious you are. I'm in full agreement with that. That's why the Eastern traditions always talk about consciousness, because one who masters being conscious all the time, if they leave the body consciously, can be conscious without the body too. I'm in full agreement with that. So again, I'm trying to figure out what this person needs to correct me on, because we agree on so many things. I guess I'm personally kind of provoked at this need that they have. It makes me think this person needs to go teach. I looked on their channel and I don't think they have any videos of their own. This person needs to go teach. Because what happens, I know this from experience because I did it. What happens when you go around trolling other people's channels and putting comments about how they're wrong, especially in this case when basically what I said in that video is almost identical to what this person said. It means you need to be teaching. That's the universe's sign. If something bothers you enough that you need to correct people, you need to be teaching. That's in my experience. And otherwise, it means that and then it begs the question, why are you denying yourself your desire to teach? And I've run into this. This person doesn't seem like this, but some people who have just really come at me, you've seen it happen. They come at me with all kinds of things, trying to tell me how I don't know what the hell I'm talking about and this and that. And after I do my thing with them and I say, you should go teach, why don't you teach? Almost invariably, they will say, well, I'm not a teacher or I don't deserve that. And there will be a lot of shame. What will come up is that they really want to teach, but they don't feel worthy of it. And so what they're doing is they're projecting onto me their feelings of unworthiness. And because I am openly stating things and teaching all this stuff and being outspoken, they want to be that, but because they don't believe that they deserve it, they turn around and attack me, because that's what they do to themselves to keep themselves from taking the risk of going out there and having somebody do to them what they're doing to me. Because that's what happens when you go out and teach, especially in the beginning. People will start attacking you, and it's the universe's way of testing you to see, are you going to follow through with this? So what this person said makes a lot of sense. So one thing is just because you had an experience in meditation, let's assume, for instance, for argument's sake, that this person is correct, that this person actually did have a memory of in between lives. Let's say that they did, and it was a real memory, and they really went through that. If what their experience was that they were in sort of a vacuum, which sounds really horrible, there was just this empty consciousness in a vacuum, and their tendency pulled them into manifestation, as they put it, tendency. Does that mean that that's the case for everybody? That was the case for them. But what religion tries to tell you is there's only one sort of thing that happens. Either you die and you go to heaven or hell. You go to the Elysian fields or you go to the underworld. You go to Valhalla or you go to the underworld. And it's a way of, people want to know what happens. Oh, that's easy. But what if it's not that simple? People who have had near-death experiences, they all come back with different, ideas, except for there's one major theme that doesn't seem to go away. Excuse me, I need some protein. There's one theme that doesn't seem to go away, and that is the light. That when you die, you get pulled towards the light. You find that in a lot of near-death experiences, and you see it in the Tibetan Book of the Dead. Tibetan Buddhism, when they're saying that when you die, the first thing that happens, the first thing, if I remember it, is boom, there's this white light. If you have no fear, you go right into the light. You achieve liberation. If you hesitate, then all these other possibilities show up. And then you have to go through all these different bardos or whatever they call them and then eventually you're pulled back into being reborn. I don't like that. I don't like that, again, because I just don't like the idea of being a victim of anything. I don't like that. So I'm not saying that doesn't happen to a lot of people, but I don't think it has to happen for everybody. My experience, I didn't have the same meditative experience as this person did about the afterlife, but I have had, my share of experiences. And one of them was I did leave my body and I was pulled into that light. I was pulled into it. And what I experienced in that light was absolute, complete, utter, orgasmic bliss. And I became aware that this was where I came from. My experience was, oh my God, I'm home. In fact, I repeated it over and over again. I'm home, I'm home, I'm home. There was no communication. There was just absolute, I mean, the bliss was obliterating me. It was so intense. My being was being obliterated by the bliss. It was frightening and wonderful all at the same time. And then the light started to fade and recede, and I was being pulled back into the earth, and I was saying, no, 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 I don't want to go back. So that was my experience. So here we have people who have two completely different experiences about what happens in meditation in the afterlife. So I'm of the belief that how you live your life now is going to have the same effect when you die. And I tell people this all the time. That's why it's so important, and so why you were so lucky to be humans, so that we can work through all of our thoughts and feelings and experiences and challenges and become conscious. And my version of conscious is exactly that, having conscious awareness of all of your thoughts and feelings, no matter how horrible. And you shouldn't try and deny your thoughts or your feelings. You should have them and learn to love yourself through them. Because trying to deny your feelings is actually self-hatred. How do I know that? Because how would you feel if you're a little kid and you're crying and you go to your parents and your parents say, knock that off, okay? You better wipe those tears. You better turn that frown upside down or I'll give you something to cry about. That would be horrible. But that's what you do to yourself whenever you're trying to stop yourself from having feelings. Fear, anger, sadness, confusion, doubt. Whenever you judge yourself, you shame yourself for your feelings, it's as if it's a parent going, you better stop crying. I don't care what your problem is. You better knock it off. So to be fully conscious is to be fully loving yourself at a time when it's hard to do so. It's real easy to want to deny your feelings and run away from uncomfortable feelings. And it's hard to love yourself through it. To be with yourself and to tell yourself, whatever your feelings are, I love you. I accept you exactly as you are. And I love that affirmation from the tapping people, the EFT guys, who say, even though I have this feeling, I thoroughly and completely accept myself. I love that. There's nothing more profound and powerful than that. Even though I have this feeling, I thoroughly and completely accept myself. That's consciousness. When you can have all of your thoughts and feelings and not act on the impulse to either act out on the feelings or to suppress them, you are in full consciousness. Now, you might be in hell, you might be miserable, and that is okay. There's nothing unspiritual about being in hell and miserable. That's another, lie of religion. That if you're happy and spiritual, you'll be happy all the time. Which is, why do you think people take drugs? Why do you think people drink? Why do you think people want to do entheogens and take ayahuasca and smoke weed all the time? Because they want to feel good. And so they've been told, if you're spiritual, you're happy and full of peaceful feelings all the time. And I'm saying that's not true. If you are spiritual, you love and accept yourself, even if the only feelings you're aware of are uncomfortable ones. So if you have the ability to stay conscious through your uncomfortable feelings, it is my belief that when you leave this body, you will have the consciousness to choose where you want to go. You want to go back down to earth? You can go, you know what? I'm going to go back down to earth, and this time I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. Does it mean that I think it's impossible for people to be unconsciously pulled into bodies? No, I don't think that makes sense. If you live unconsciously, if in your physical life you run around and are pulled by all of your unconscious feelings and you react to your impulses or try to suppress them, then you're going to manifest all the things you're trying to suppress. The thing you fear is what you will manifest. The things you fight against is what you will manifest. That's why I'm not taking a side in all this political garbage that's going on. I mean, I am going to point out when people are being ridiculous, but when people, every single election since I've been alive, every single one, and you think about all the stuff we went through. When I was a kid, we really thought that the Russians were going to bomb us. We thought we were going to get bombed by Russia, nuclear bombs. And we actually had to do drills where we hid under our desk, like that would mean anything in a nuclear attack. And then we saw what happened with that changed. And then there was, then we've had terrorism. Terrorism has been the real thing. And that has been the most important thing, and that's been a real thing, right? A lot of people were killed in 9/11. It happens all over the world. And now we've got something that has never been on the earth ever. The entire world is experiencing a plague of a virus. It's never happened in the history of the world, the whole world. So there's always something going on. The idea that this is the only election, and if we just fix this election, it'll all be okay, is the epitome of childish fear. It's going to change. Whatever it is, trust me, it's going to change, and some new problem will arise. So we can't do anything about that unless your dharma, your orlog, is to be somebody who is an activist or somebody who does something to help society. If that's your dharma, then by all means go do it. My dharma in this life is to be a spiritual teacher and practitioner. So I don't spend time worrying about things that I don't have any control over. I don't worry about it. And and I worry about the things I do have control over, which is being conscious. I work on being conscious, and that has served me very well up till this point, knock on wood. So I believe that after this life, the level of consciousness you've had here is what you're going to have there. Now, there are people who've had near-death experiences who went to hell, who will tell you how the devil was there and all kinds of horrible things happened. And when you listen to them, they tend to be people who live in fear in their waking life. Christians who really believe that's where they go. There's a lot of people in the middle who believe that they've seen Jesus now, and Jesus was there. I'll give you one example. One woman had a near-death experience and saw Jesus. And Jesus told her all kinds of things, which I don't have a problem with, about how to live life and how to be conscious and how to be loving and all things that I believe are all true, but she was hearing it from Jesus. And she talked about Jesus's blonde hair and his blue eyes, which made me go, what? Now, there are two problems with that. Number one, we know for a fact Jesus never existed. If you don't believe me, go watch my videos on Jesus never existed. There's archaeological and historical proof that he never existed. So that's one problem. So if you die and you talk to Jesus, how could that be the case when he never existed? Then there's another problem, which is if Jesus did exist 2,000 years ago in Palestine, he would look very different. He would look like a modern Palestinian. By the way, modern Palestinians are the only direct descendants of the children of Israel, in case you didn't know that. He's going to look just like a Palestinian. He's going to have olive skin, perhaps dark olive skin, maybe wavy black hair, and he's going to have dark brown, almost black eyes. He would be very dark skinned. Probably have other facial features. So he's definitely not going to be a blonde-haired, blue-eyed person. So she's even talking about after she comes back, Jesus appears to her in his blue eyes, and it's like, well, that's obviously her projection. Does that mean it didn't really happen? Does that mean she didn't die and experience all these things? It doesn't mean that. It means that she projected her belief into her experience. So just because this person says, I meditated for very long and this was my experience, that I lived in this, that I was just consciousness in a vacuum, that's your projection. That doesn't mean that's going to be my experience, and that there was a tendency that pulled you back. That may be your experience. It doesn't mean that has to be my experience. So what kind of experience do you want to have? What kind of experience do you want to have after death? If you want to decide what kind of experience you have, the only way that you're going to, in my opinion, the only way that you're going to have any power over that is to do everything in your power to be fully conscious in this lifetime. And by conscious, I mean conscious of all of your thoughts and feelings. Okay. So I'm happy to take any questions. This is a question and answer, so I'll take some questions here since I do see some. Raymond Avich question. So I watched your video where you said that when you take risks, the universe rewards you for it. Does that mean the or risks you take, the easier it is for the more risks? Okay, there's a letter missing. So does that mean that the more risks you take, the easier it is for you to get to your soul desire? Well, I'm glad you saw the video. I would watch more of those videos so you understand it. So, I mean, it's not that what you're saying is wrong, because, there's no end to the, life is a continuous risk. You're constantly risking. That you should get in the habit of constantly taking risks for what you want. So yeah, in terms of that, yeah, that's going to be the case. It's easier for me now. It doesn't mean that I don't sometimes go through a lot of fear and confusion about what to do next. I do. I'm no different than you guys in that regard. So if I do take risks and I do take action, it's because I have gotten into the habit of doing so. So I get into the habit of doing so, and then it's not like it's any easier. It's just that, well, I know from experience that if I take a risk, I usually get what I want, so I'm going to take a risk. So the answer to your question is yes, but your desire to make it easier, that's, okay, so I was trying to figure out, there's something about your question that bothers me, and that's what bothers me. You're looking for something to make it easier. And that means that you don't like being uncomfortable, and you want the uncomfortable feeling to go away. So I'd get rid of that. I mean, talk to somebody who's training to be Mr. Olympia. Can you imagine somebody training for Mr. Olympia saying, yeah, this workout has been really hard. I hope the workouts get easier. No, the guys that want to become Mr. Olympia go out of their way to make the resistance harder, the pain in their muscles more. The more pain, more gain. So, that goes against how things work. It only gets easier, and I'm okay if it gets easier for you, that's fine, but again, I want you to get honest about the feeling of I just don't want to be uncomfortable, and I'm trying to find a way to avoid that. I don't think that serves you. If you know what it is that you want, and you want it more than anything else, you're not going to be thinking about the challenge or the risk. And that's where you want to be. You want to be aware of what you want, and you want that more than you want anything, and you're willing to go through whatever challenge or pain or difficulty to achieve it. When that's the case, then you're not asking yourself these questions of when is it going to get easier. Okay? Raymond Avich, question. Can you find your Dharma by what you have in the 9th house of your Vedic chart? Well, that is the house of Dharma, so I'm not going to say no to that. But I don't like your question because it means you don't know what your Dharma is. And there's no reason for you not to know what your Dharma is. There's no reason. Your Dharma is going to be given to you based on your soul desire. So let me tell you how to do that. If you haven't already learned, it's a very simple process. Not necessarily easy for everybody, because the main problem with finding out what your desire is sometimes, and this is true for pretty much everybody, at some point in your life, you will be confused between what you think you want and what you truly want. And when you go after what you think you want, then you end up usually someplace you don't want to be. So you're asking me that question tells me you don't know what you want. You don't know what your soul wants, and that's very common. A lot of people have that experience. I certainly did for a lot of my life. So it's very simple. First thing that you do is you forget about everything that you've heard me say, and you just simply go and give yourself an exercise. And this is just a psychological exercise. It doesn't mean anything. So what you experience in this psychological exercise, don't try to use it for your real life. Don't. Because it won't have anything to do with your real life. It's just an exercise for your imagination. And the goal of the exercise is to see how big you can imagine the most impossible imagining scenario, the most magical. That's where we're going, like little kids. Okay? So now that's where we're going to go. Now, we're going to go to a place called Fantasyland. And in Fantasyland, you can have everything that you want. You don't need money. So the first rule about Fantasyland is there's no money. And you don't need money to survive. If you want a big mansion, you magically have a mansion. You want a cute little cabin in the woods, you magically have a cute little cabin in the woods. You have everything that you want. You don't have to have money to buy it. So that's the first thing. Second thing is that you can do absolutely anything. There's no limitations. There's nothing impossible. If you want to be 100 feet tall, you can be 100 feet tall. And so you don't need money, number one. Number two, you can do anything and be anything. Number three, you cannot live your life for anybody else. So you can't do anything to please anybody. Your parents, society, even God. You can't live to please God. You can only live to please yourself, and it doesn't have to mean anything. It doesn't matter how impractical or how wrong or how selfish. It doesn't matter. You have to only do those things that you want. So that's the fourth one. You can only do those things that you personally want. Okay? So those are the four things. Number one, you don't need money. Number two, you can be anything. Number three, you can't do anything for anybody else. And number four, you must only do those things that you selfishly want. Now, in this fantasy land that doesn't exist, that is impossible, under those conditions, right off the top of your head, what do you want to do? Now, if you're able to tap into it, there will be something that comes up. You'll think about, and you'll have a desire, and it will bring you joy. The thought of that fantasy, which is impossible, when you think of that impossible fantasy, there will be a feeling of joy attached to it. And then, now that we've done that fantasy exercise, which is impossible and has nothing to do with real life, I want you to pull yourself out of that fantasy, because now we're going to do it for real. And now that I've said that, I was lying to you. That fantasy is exactly what you're supposed to do. That thing that if you could do absolutely anything, and if it just made you personally happy, and you didn't have to please anybody else or have any money, what would be that one thing that, God, that would be so much fun? That's the thing you have to do. That's your dharma. You know where I live? Let me see if I can show you. I might have taken it off, but in case I didn't, let me see if I have the video here. This is where I live. I decided, let me see, here's this. Yep, there it is. I decided that I wanted to live in a forested area with empty, beautiful beaches, semi-tropical. I wanted to live somewhere where I could speak English and go and drive to grocery stores, and I wanted to have empty, beautiful beaches to surf. And I decided that that was what I deserved. I didn't know how I was going to do it or where I was going to go or how I was going to afford it. I want to live by myself in a house on the beach. And guess what? That's exactly what I have. And I have that. That right there, what you just saw, is right across the street from me. And all I have to do is just simply walk out of my 3-bedroom, 2.5-story house. All I have to do is just walk out my front door, cross the street, and I'm in that forest right above that beach. And then I get to walk down the trail and I'm on the beach and the water is warm and the waves are fun and there's nice people and beautiful women and it's fantasy. And even now during COVID, I mean, it's just like I have this fantasy life because I took myself through that process and I said, if I could just fantasize, what would I do? And I said, why don't I just do it? That's my dharma. My dharma is what I just saw, what I just showed you. So you trying to figure out what your dharma is means you don't know what you want. So that's, stop trying to figure it out. Stop thinking so hard. Just go be what you want and take risks. Okay, Raymond Avich question. Can you find, I already answered that. Jameson Colliday question. What hope for spiritual work is there for someone who has brain damage? Why are you asking me that question? Do you have brain damage? Did you have a stroke? Understand the feeling of not wanting to project my death, but I can't help but be sad that with... Are you telling me that you've had a stroke? Are you telling me you have brain damage? You're going to have to tell me that before I'll even begin to answer that question. Let's see what else. Jameson Colliday question, part 2. Brain damage that my dad has suffered. His ability to concentrate and do any sort of deep healing and unwinding of karma seems impossible when he can't even concentrate to pick a meal. Well, first off, let me just say, I don't think anything is impossible. I have a website here of somebody who had Lou Gehrig's disease, ALS. And that person went through a self-healing process of these kinds of things that I'm talking about. And according to what I read, if it's true, they completely healed themselves. Here's my problem with what you're saying, Jameson. Your dad is not your problem. Who put you responsible for whether or not your dad can have a spiritual life and be healed? That's not your... I got nothing against you being there, and if you can be helpful, great. I have no problem with that. But let's be honest, everything in everybody's life is a result of their karma, which is their work. They've worked to create it. It's his job to work himself out of it. So what you're really asking me is, can I give you a magical thing which you can then go and give your dad? And I can't do that, because that's something he has to do. If he comes to you and asks for your help and says, hey, Jameson, I really want help. Can you give me some kind of spiritual thing I can do to heal myself? Then, see what happens. But nothing is impossible. But my experience is that people usually create their own reality, and you're not going to talk them out of that. What's really going on here is that, I don't know, there's probably a lot of things going on here, but for you personally, I can only imagine how difficult it is to see somebody you love and you can't do anything to help them. But you're also projecting yourself into that. What happened to your dad is not what's going to happen to you. You didn't say that, but how can you not have that feeling? How can you not project yourself into that? Which is part of the reason why you feel the need to go and take care of him. Now, he's your dad. I don't know how old he is, but, at some point, let's go back to what I put here on the very beginning. Listen, death's going to come for all of us. Death is inevitable. The more you resist death, the faster it comes. When you take fearless actions, death has to stop and watch, which means if you want to extend your life, take fearless action, and death has to watch while you take action. You only have one life in this body. Okay? So, Jameson, I want to do everything I can to help you have your spiritual practice so that you can be everything you want to be. If there was something I could do to take away the pain and the sadness and the fear of you watching your father be ill, I would, but I can't do that. Because he's the only one that can do that. And the other thing is, you don't know what he came here to experience. How do you know that that isn't something his soul needs to go through? That he chose to have that experience because there was something he needs to learn, and that was his desire, his karma. Why would you want to take that away from him? Again, if he comes to you and asks for help, help him. If you have something, help him out. But, there's a desperation in this, how can you help him with his spiritual work? It's not your job to give him and make him, it's not your job to do that. Your job is to live your life. Here's the other thing. If you want to help everybody's consciousness, then your job is to fulfill your desires and live your evolution and be the most evolved person that you can be. By doing that, you automatically raise everybody else's awareness, including your dad's. So you're so focused on him. How are you working on yourself when you're focused on something that you don't have any control over? Remember what I said earlier during this video. I said, the only thing that I have, I don't worry about things I don't have any control over. It's a waste of time. I don't do it. I worry about myself. I have a limited amount of control over myself, so I worry about those things I have control over, things that I can do, I can change. And so I work on that, and I work on healing myself all the time. I work on healing myself. I'm pushing 60. I just turned 57. So I'd be lying to you if I said I wasn't starting to see feel the effects of it. But there are things I can do. So I focus on what I can do. And as it turns out, there's a lot I can do. And I think I can make even more progress than I realized. Yeah, don't get me wrong. I'm in very good health. I surf, I gym, martial arts like that. But I want to be even healthier. And I have control over that. You don't have any control over your dad. Sorry. And you got to let him live, and you got to let him die. I don't know how much longer he has left to live. I wish him a long, happy, healthy life. Maybe he's going to die in 10 years or 20 years, but you got to let him die. You got to let him have his life. It saddens me to hear that you're so wrapped up in him that you're not talking about how you can have your life. Let's see what else. Question, clarified. Spiritual work meaning making the preparations for death. So again, you're climbing into his business. So if I go back to your question, what hope for spiritual work is there? That already assumes that there isn't any, so I feel the hopelessness coming from you. What hope for spiritual work is there for someone who has brain damage? Again, it's not your problem. Your problem is dealing with the lesson of watching somebody lose mental control. That's obviously your issue. He's not having that issue. He's not thinking about it the same way you are. Again, you're projecting onto him. And I would too. It makes sense. You'd be projecting onto him what you don't want to have happen to yourself. I wouldn't want that to happen to me either. That's a very frightening thing. So again, this isn't about him, this is about you. Take care of yourself, let the universe take care of him. And unfortunately, death is a messy thing. There's just, listen, my plan is to wake up one day and to go surfing when I'm 110 years old in perfectly physical, healthy body, and go to the gym and then have sex and then have a beautiful meal, go to bed and never wake up. That's how I want to die. Because who doesn't want to die like that? That would be how I want to go. But the fact is that for most people, death gets really messy. The body starts falling apart and things are messy. That's just the way it is. And that's not anything you can do about. You can't change that for anybody. So first off, I want to acknowledge your desire for helping him, but you already know what you can and can't do, and now it's time to let him live out his own karma and live out his own life and prepare in his own way. And your job is to take care of you. All right, let's see what else. Chloe Milne, if you're new to the channel, welcome. Please write the word question before you put a question so I see it, because that way lots of people leave comments and things and I scroll past them, and if I don't see the word question, I'll scroll past your question. And I don't want to do that. You said, did I choose this life before I was born? Yes. Because if you didn't, that means you're a victim. It means that other things are controlling your life. And again, I don't care if that's true or not. What I care about is what helps you live your life now. And I know for a fact that in my life, making the assumption that everything in my life, including what I was born with, was my choice, gives me the power. I have a mindset that starts looking for solutions and ways to make life better. Whereas to whatever extent you think you're victimized and limited, then you stop trying to do anything and you wait around and you complain. This is what a lot of people do. They complain about how everybody's doing it to them. So do I believe that you chose this life? Yep. I believe that you chose this one and you'll choose the next one. Let's see, what else? Jameson Colliday question. More asking for how to reconcile and accept the feelings of sadness and not try to impose spiritual wisdom, i.e. try to make him have my death, maintaining boundary not to overcommit to helping. Well, I appreciate that, but you kind of answered your own question there. First off, Jameson, just have your feelings. It's okay to feel completely out of control. It's okay to be full of pain and fear and misery. It's okay to just to not even know what the hell you're feeling. It's okay not to know what the hell you're supposed to do next. Even though I have this feeling, I thoroughly and appreciate myself. Even though I have this feeling, I thoroughly and completely accept myself. This is a messed up situation. It's really painful, and there's nothing that can be done about it. Just have it. Just be okay with it. Just be good to yourself. You know, imagine a 4-year-old Jameson comes up to you and starts asking you all these questions. You would pick that little 4-year-old up and you'd put him on your chest, maybe you'd give him a hug and you'd sit there and you would tell him it was okay to feel everything that you're feeling. So try and do that for yourself. And then, you know, focus on you. Focus on making your life, you know, because what's going to happen with him is going to, like we already said, is out of anybody's control. But you still have a life to live. Go do it. Go do your practice, whatever that is. Joy is optional. Question, do you teach flute? I do not teach flute. I do have some videos on YouTube somewhere, maybe not on this channel, where I teach how to do the flute. But no, to answer your question, no, I'm not currently teaching flute at this time. Bob Yu, question. From 0 Point live stream, so the live stream I did earlier today, forgive if wrong place. What about the desire to not desire, but from your perspective of accepting the desires, but only acting on the ones that feed your soul desire? I don't understand what you're asking me. From 0 Point live, what about the desire to not desire, but from your, I don't, your question just isn't clear. Try writing it again. I didn't understand any of it. Silva Ivanda, would people go towards similar DNA that they had when they reincarnate? I don't know. I don't think that it has to be one way or another. Let me explain to you some of my experiences about that. So obviously, if you look at me, I'm of Northern European descent. As it turns out, I am descended from Scandinavians, from Vikings. My last name, Denny, is an older English pronunciation of the word Danish. And that was the word they used for Vikings. Anybody who was a Viking on Britain, they called them, the Danish guy. So those are my ancestors. And I didn't know that for years. In fact, I thought I was Celtic because Denny sounds Irish. And so I thought I was Celtic. And I actually bought into this whole idea that I was like this Celtic, and I bought into the whole thing about those evil Anglo-Saxons who came over and invaded Britain and stole the native druids' homes and all. I bought into all that. It's amazing to me that that people believe that that's what happened. But I believed that, and it gave me this victim mentality that I carried with me. And I hated anything having to do with anything Germanic. I didn't like the idea of Vikings. I didn't like the idea of Germans, because I grew up in the '60s watching movies about World War II and Nazis, and I had this German nurse when I was a kid when I'd go to get shots as a little kid. And there was this big, tall, enormous German woman, and she was giving me shots. Stay still, and I was so afraid of her. Her accent scared me, and so I held on to that until I started getting these downloads. What had happened is that I had gotten as far as I could get in the Taoist practice that I was doing. And I really wanted to go train with the Grand Master, and I really wanted to master the Taoist sect and all that. And things happened that prevented me from getting that. I was very upset about that. And so because I didn't have somebody to go and learn the more advanced stuff, I had to find it wherever I could. And so one of the places that I would do it is I'd go into meditation and I would ask questions. And I would get these downloads. And I started to do, and then I'd get these practices. I'd get these energy practices and these meditations and these sounds and all kinds of stuff like that. And they were more powerful than anything I'd ever been taught. And so I knew I was getting taught from somebody somewhere. I assumed that it was coming from the Taoist masters, ascended masters. And long story short, I went to go find out where this breath right here, which I teach. You can go on anywhere on YouTube and type in this, and you can learn it. If there's one thing that you should learn from me to get the power that I seek after and I experience, it would be that, the Hul breath. Go type that in and go do it. That came to me in a meditation. Very subtly, it came to me. I said, just give me a one-word mantra, breath meditation. I got this vision but it was very subtle. I could very easily have just said, just brushed it away and said, oh, that's my own imagination. But I didn't. I just went, this is interesting. And then I did it, and the energy was intense, super intense. And so I knew that I had been given something, and I assumed it came from Taoist immortals. So I started looking for it everywhere, and I couldn't find it. But it turns out that sound of Hul, when I went and did a vision, I didn't see anything in the Far East. What I saw was Northern Europe, 50,000 years ago. And it turns out that the oldest deity in Northern Europe is a deity called Hole or Hulda. And Hole and Hulda means hidden. Means that which is hidden. And it means earth. It's the Mother Earth. She's the oldest earth mother deity, I believe, that we know of in Europe. My shamanic experiences, I'm getting chills thinking about it. My shamanic experiences took me all the way back to the first humans that showed up in Northern Europe. By the way, they didn't look anything like me, but they're my ancestors. And they had this practice of chanting to the Earth Mother goddess. I'm getting very emotional thinking about it. And so that was my DNA kicking in. And when I read Norse mythology, and I can see in there all of the spiritual teachings and the power of the gods and what is in all the symbolism. My DNA, I can feel my DNA just lighting up. So I can't deny, as much as you heard, I mean, I hate racism very much, and I was very anti-Germanic for most of my life. Ironically, it turns out I'm directly descended from Germanic tribespeople. So I had to get over that real quick because I was getting all this power, and I had to get over my own prejudice against my own ethnic heritage. So to answer your question, will you choose Where is that? Will you choose? Where is it? Would people go towards similar DNA that they had when they were reincarnated? So it's certainly possible, but I can also, now having shared that story with you, there's a reason why I was training in Taoist mysticism, because I have a past life as a Taoist. And I remember that very clearly. And I met somebody who, without knowing it, started telling me about this past life where I was this Chinese soldier, and I picked her up and I carried her. She only remembered one thing, that I picked her up and I carried her across a river or something like that during wartime. And when she saw me, she got all misty-eyed, and she remembered that. And when I was like 10 years old, somebody on television said the word Tao, and I knew exactly what it meant. I knew exactly what it was. Nobody ever told me what Tao or Taoism was. I knew exactly what it was. When I was 20-something years old, I went to a party and people were playing African drums and they were doing a drum circle, and I thought, oh my God, how typical and new agey and all that. And so I picked up a drum and I started playing, and all this stuff started happening to me. I could feel all this stuff in my chest, and I was like, what the hell's going on? So I asked the guy, I said, where can I learn this? And he said, oh, go see this guy, Baba Ayo Adayemi. And I found his address, and I walked in. I walked into his studio, and I walked in the back door, and he was there by the front door, and next to him was this pile of flyers that had the schedule of drum classes. A breeze came in, picked up the top flyer. The flyer floated through the room and landed in my hand at the back of the room where I was standing. And he goes, yes, oh, the drums are calling you. And I teach, his sacred African drum rhythm, and I've made CDs about it. And so there's no doubt I have a past life in that tradition. So are you going to be born? I don't know. I don't know what you're going to be born as. I obviously don't know. But what an incredible adventure. What an incredible adventure. We've got this, each of us has a DNA connection to our ethnic ancestors. And I believe everybody should, if they choose to, I believe everybody should find out what their ethnic background is and go find out what their ancestors practiced. And at least study it, to satisfy that. And at the same time, you don't know how much karma you have with other traditions. Because I know I have past life, in Taoist stuff, I have past life in African stuff. And so I still have a connection to those ascended masters who still work with me, even in different traditions. So you owe it to yourself to go and investigate all of that. What I'm going to be in the next life, I honestly don't care. At this point, I don't know. I'm going to make that decision when I'm in between lives. According to one of my Vedic readings, I have one lifetime left and then I'm done. And again, that may or may not be true. I don't know. Let's see. What else? Any other questions? Jonathan Todd, question. I apologize if you have made a video on this specific topic, but what do you think is the spiritual root of addiction? Really good question. There's probably a lot of things, but if we're talking about a genetic, because there are some people that are more genetically susceptible to, like, alcoholism, for example. Now, part of it is if you have societies that don't have alcohol, and you introduce alcohol, like in, I believe, Native Americans and in other places. I think here too in Australia, the indigenous people here, they didn't have that. You introduce alcohol out of nowhere, you end up with a lot of alcoholism. But I think also it has to do with when, every society that has a strong alcoholic tendency, drug addict tendency, those are societies whose religious path has been taken from them. So here, as I understand it, among the indigenous people, there's rampant alcoholism and drug addiction. And people don't know it. It's just like, people who live here know it. Maybe you've heard of it, but sadly enough, the way that the indigenous people here are continue to be treated is the same thing that has happened in the United States. And so, that's why in the United States, you go to reservations, you see a lot of alcoholism and drug addiction. And I think part of that has to do with, when you have a conquering society comes in that takes away the indigenous people's spirituality, you take their soul away. And then people look for ways to fill that hole, and alcohol and drugs ends up becoming a way to do that. So I think that's one root of alcoholism and drug addiction. And so, you see that a lot in Europe as well. And I haven't talked about it a lot, but if you go back far enough in time, you find out that the same thing that Germanic people have done to indigenous peoples across the world, like in the United States and here in Australia, you find that those things happened to Germanic people by the Romans. The Romans did it to the Germanic people. They racially oppressed them. They destroyed their culture, their religion. They had treaties and broke treaties with them. They took them as slaves for 400 years, and that ends up getting into the DNA and into the collective unconscious of that people. And what ends up happening is you end up having all kinds of problems, and one of them is alcoholism and drug addiction. That's just my theory. Take it for what it is. That's what I think. Jameson Colliday question response. Issue is that I am not sure about what I can do and can't give because my ability to distinguish what is sincere selfish desire to help and the other being a result of wound patterns. So, I don't know. Just stay with yourself. There's no way that there's not going to be. And I think I know who you are. And if I remember you correctly, there's some codependence that's going to be inherent in that, and that's not your fault. But codependence is not, when you act out of a codependent desire to fix is not help. There's a difference between trying to fix somebody and trying to help them. When you're trying to help somebody, you know what you can and can't do. It might be sad for you, but hey, I can't do anything more than that. And then you're able to let go. You have your feelings, you're sad, but you let go. If you're trying to fix somebody and you can't let go of it, it means that you're projecting your selfish, unresolved needs onto them. And what you're doing for them is what you want somebody to do for you. So what you're really asking me, Jameson, if I'm hearing you correctly, which I might not be, but if what I'm hearing you correctly is that you want somebody to come along and help you spiritually with your internal death experience. And that's something that, that if you can own that, then your dad, that might be the gift that your dad is giving you. The gift that your dad is giving you is that, hey, I'm now showing you in my physical body how you feel inside. And that feeling of what the hell do I do? How can I fix it? You're trying to fix yourself. And so do your spiritual work. Go to Codependence Anonymous or Al-Anon or wherever you need to go to get your codependent issues taken care of. Do your spiritual work. Do all the stuff you need to do. Make sure you take care of yourself. Try to avoid any mind-altering chemicals or, damaging chemicals, and make sure that you have somebody to talk to. Have a therapist or a mentor or a teacher or somebody that you can talk to on a regular basis. This stuff isn't going to go away tomorrow. This is going to be lifelong stuff. If I think I know who I'm talking to. You're going to be dealing with this for a long time. Don't skimp on it. Take care of yourself. I can tell you the reason why I'm alive and I have what I have is because I have been doing this stuff, my whole life. I've been doing it for 40 years, nonstop. That's why I'm where I'm at and my brother's where he's at. It's the only reason. So just keep doing the work, one day at a time. No matter how tough it is, you just keep doing it. And make sure that you take advantage of all the tools necessary. 12-step groups, therapists, teachers, meditative practices, energy practices. Make use of all of it because you deserve it. Chloe Milne question, is my life planned if I chose it already? Well, so Chloe, what are you asking me? I mean, you just asked me two questions. You ask, is my life planned, or did I choose it? Why do you care? I mean, if you chose it, why are you worrying about it? This life, you're talking about this one. Are you saying? Are you wondering? Is there just one path? It doesn't matter whether there's one path or not. What matters is that you have choice right now. So watch my videos on weird. This is my ethnic background. This is the teaching of destiny. So according to my ancestors, my pre-Christian ancestors, the universe is woven together by three strands. And these three strands create a web. This web is called the web of weird. Weird, W-Y-R-D, is, by the way, the same word that we have now. I think it's W-I-E. Is that it? W-I-E. I think that's it. It's the same word. We still use it. The Christians couldn't get rid of it. But it used to be the most powerful force in the universe for my ancestors. So nowadays when people go, oh, that's weird, they mean it's strange and unpredictable and frightening. But when my ancestors said weird, they still had a lot of respect for it, but it meant that's the weaving of space-time. Weird means that which has been woven. So there are three strands. There's origin, which is one strand. There is immediacy, which is another strand. And then there's a third strand, which means debt, D-E-B-T, debt. So origin is one strand. Immediacy is the second strand. And debt is the third strand. These three strands come together and create everything. Now, we live in what is called immediacy, or the present moment. And if you think about it, the present moment never starts or ends. You're always in the present moment. Time is an illusion. You live in this present moment. In this present moment, every millisecond, no matter how strong the impulse inside of you, no matter how strong the programming, you have choice over what you choose to assume, what you choose to invest in, what you choose to do, how you choose to react. The chance, it might be minuscule, the amount of power you have might be minuscule, but that power is enough. You could do something completely opposite if you make the decision to do something different. Each time, each nanosecond that you make a decision, whether it's the same decision that you've been programmed to do, or you take a risk and you make a new decision, guess what happens? A new reality begins being woven. Your present state of mind is based on your origin, which is the story that you tell yourself. My name is Michael William Denny. My spiritual name is Mahadeva. I live in Australia. I surf. I'm 57 years old. That's my story. My parents did this. My brother did that. I feel this way. That's my story. That's my origin. And that's constantly pressuring me to make decisions, to make choices, even choosing on what I choose to believe and not believe, my assumptions. Constantly being pressured by that. And the decision that I make adds a new element to the origin story. Now, if I do the same thing, if I keep doing the same thing over and over again, my origin never changes. If I do something differently that's completely different from my nature, I've just now rewritten my whole origin story. It's totally different now. Because your origin story determines your debt. The future is a debt that must be paid. Now, If you have taken positive action, if you've taken a risk towards your soul, guess what? The debt is you're going to get paid lots of good stuff. You're going to get happiness, health, whatever, spiritual evolution, whatever it is. If you keep making the same decisions over and over again based on the story, especially like people who complain about, oh, my life, and you make a choice based on that, then you're going to create a future where you're going to have to pay that debt. You're going to create that. But living in the moment, every single moment you have, every single nanosecond, you can completely change who you are if you choose to do it. If you find a way to live, and that way to live is a complete change in who you are, and you keep making those decisions over and over and over again in the immediacy of the now, you keep rewriting the past, which keeps rewriting the future. You see? This is what spiritual discipline is. This is why you go to yoga. Yogis get up at 4:30 every morning and they chant whatever mantra. They're doing that because the discipline of doing that gives you the ability to decide what you want to choose to do in the immediacy of the now. Meditation, whether you're doing emptiness meditation and you're watching your thoughts go by, it's giving the discipline. Some people can't sit. You want to meditate for an hour a day, meditate for an hour a day. Or I suggest doing the whole breath. I love doing that. Do that for an hour a day. And watch what happens. Watch how your decisions start to change. You start to change. You change your future. So you're asking me these questions from the perspective of a person who's trapped. If my life is planned, and I chose it already, or can I change it? You're asking me that question because you feel trapped. And I understand that. That's the nature of origin. That's the nature of your story. Your story is there because it's trying to trap you. And the moment that you accept that you're trapped in it, then you get to play it out. And that's part of the video game. The web of weird, the 3 strands of the web of weird is the video game that you came in here to be in. And there's, the video game is doing all kinds of things. And how you choose to interact in the video game will decide whether or not you get to level 27 or not. So if you start from the assumption that I'm sharing with you that every single moment is a potential infinite change for you, then you're not going to be asking me these questions. If I chose my life already, is it all planned out, or do I have... Why are you asking me this? The truth is, if it's already planned out, it doesn't matter. That ends up being the same. Do the things that give you the greatest joy and the greatest strength and the greatest power. And don't do the things that don't, even if it takes everything inside of you to do the opposite of what your impulses or somebody else is telling you to do. It's still the same. But you think if I tell you, no, your choices are infinite, that's somehow going to take away the influence of your origin, and it's not. And you think if I tell you, yes, your destiny is planned out, you think that's going to take away your ability to choose. But maybe you're destined to be the most powerful spiritual force in the universe in this lifetime, and me telling you, no, your destiny is fixed, that will bother you so much that you'll go, no, I'm going to choose every moment. And if I say, yes, you have nothing but infinite choices, maybe that will stimulate you to feel lazy, and then you won't want to do anything, and then you won't accomplish your goals. So what difference does it make? You still have to do the same thing. You still have to live in every single moment. And I say, make the choice of your soul. Make the choice of your destiny, of your power, of your greatest joy. And die. Be willing to die doing that. My ancestors said, those who die in battle go to Valhalla. Valhalla with Odin and the rest of the warriors in that glorious, longhouse with the fires burning and the shields on, and the ale that never ends, and the partying and the drinking and the camaraderie. You end up there if you die in battle. What does that mean? It means, go back 1,000 years. People died in battle for something that meant something to them personally. there was some other tribe, or the Huns were coming in and they're going to take away your land. You were dying to keep your land, your way of life, protecting your family. You were protecting that which you loved. And if you died willing to sacrifice everything for what you loved, you went to Valhalla. What that means is that the battle isn't against the Huns anymore. The battle is against your origin story. You are fighting a life and death battle over this origin story that's trying to keep you trapped in you doing the same thing over and over and over again. If you're willing to die, literally be willing to die for what makes you happy. In my experience, in order to have what I want, again, I'll show it to you again. If you were to talk to me 5 years ago, if you were to talk to me 5 years ago, and if you were to tell me, see, where'd it go? If you were to tell me 5 years ago that I would be living right across the street from this, and that I got to walk through a beautiful rainforest with all crazy happening birds, and there's all kinds of weird animals and the beautiful warm water, and that I could go surf these empty, beautiful waves with nobody to bother me, and everybody would be nice and happy, and I could speak English and go get massages at massage parlors, and that the city was just big enough to have everything that I need, but that there was just wilderness in every direction for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of miles, I might not have believed you. But when I decided that what I wanted, and I went through that same fantasy exercise that I gave you guys earlier in this video, I said, if I could have anything, what would I want? And I started describing what I thought didn't exist. Well, I want to live right on the beach in a nice big house where I can have a place to practice my martial arts down below, and I have my this, and it's quiet, and I don't have any neighbors. And I want to be able to walk out of my house and walk through forest. And I want it to be warm, and I want the beaches to be beautiful and warm, and there not to be any sharks. And I want there to be really good surf, but I don't want there to be a lot of surfers. And I want to just have, let's say, I need at least one massage parlor because my back needs a massage after I go surfing. And I want to go to like a grocery store, and I don't want to learn another language. I want to speak English. I went that and I said that this is totally impossible, but that's what I want. And then somebody said, hey, you should come over to this area in Australia. You should come check it out. You should come live here. And I went, okay. And I got on a plane and I checked it out. And it was exactly what I had said I wanted. And, for right now, I'm still here. It's my plan to stay here. But I'm here right now. And so I was willing. I didn't know what was going to happen. I had what I thought was a perfect scenario up until that point. I was renting a house in Manhattan Beach, 2 blocks from the ocean, and I was miserable, but it was what I thought I wanted, and I knew I had to get the hell out of the United States. I just had to get out. I didn't know what, and I didn't know what was going to happen, and my lease was up, and I sold everything that I couldn't take with me, and I took a couple of surfboards and a couple of suitcases, and I got on a plane, didn't know what the hell I was going to find, and here I am. I'm still here. And as it turns out, I got here before COVID hit. And I got to live in paradise and not have to wear a mask and worry about that. Well, the whole rest of the world is worrying about COVID. I'm surfing empty beaches and like nothing's ever changed. Why do I have that? Because I was willing to die for what I wanted. Once you know what it is you want, you've got to be willing to die to get it. And if you're not that desperate, then you'll find a way to talk yourself out of it, in my experience. So who gives a crap if you chose your life, whether you have a choice or not? Act as though you have infinite choices and you have to fight for what you want. If you act that way, in my experience, you'll get everything you want. But you'll have to face your deepest fears as you do it. See what else? Bob Yu, question. About 6 years ago, I foolishly took 10 grams of mushrooms and got caught in the loop, and it knocked me on my ass for several months, which got me started on spiritual journey. Have you have I what? Oh, that's Jonathan Todd. Have you got caught in the loop during meditation or using medicine, and what do you make of it? Well, when you use the word medicine, you mean hallucinogens. I don't use hallucinogens because, number one, I don't need it. And I'll tell that to everybody. You don't need it. Hallucinogens had a time, and those times have come and gone. And, the Taoist tradition and the Vedic tradition, I know the Vedic tradition did, I believe the Taoist tradition did as well. They used hallucinogens. In fact, the Vedas, the sacred scriptures of India, were written under the influence of a very powerful hallucinogen, which we don't know what it is. We think that it was a combination of cannabis and ephedra and I don't know what else. Some other stuff, that the bunch of stuff they got and brewed together and did it under the moonlight and did mantras to it. But the priests would drink it, and then during the intoxication of that, they would channel Indra, and Indra, through them, wrote the Vedas. So all of the hymns, Triambakam yajammahe sugantim pushtivardhanam urvarukamiva bantanan mrityormukshiyam amritat. That mantra is taken from a Vedic hymn. Those were done under the influence of an entheogen. And they no longer know how they made that soma drink anymore. They think, some people think, but they don't. And the priests don't use it anymore because they don't need to. Because now they have this thing called Kundalini Yoga. Very high level practices, the left-hand path, tantric meditation and ritual and mantra and all kinds of crazy powerful stuff that you and I probably have no idea exists. Trust me, there's stuff out there that you don't even realize the power that exists out there. And that's why we don't need to do that anymore. The energy practice that I do is far, far more potent than any entheogen you can come up with. And the great thing is that there's no negative side effects from it. So have I gotten in that loop? I mean, when I was a kid, I had some bad trips, when I was in high school and I took drugs. I had some bad trips. Is that what you're talking about? Yeah, I had those. And that's the problem. People who think entheogens are, quote, medicine are people who are taking something that is a sacred part of somebody else's ethnic and spiritual tradition, and they're tearing it out of context. Because I'm here to tell you that people who are born in the Western world are not designed for hallucinogens. Just because of where you lived and how you grew up, even if you weren't religious, even if you weren't dysfunctional, which most people in the Western world are totally dysfunctional, even if none of those things are true, you are not designed for entheogens. Because people take entheogens now, like people go to South America and they take, ayahuasca retreats, or people get DMT straight and just pound it straight, and they think they're having a spiritual experience, and they're doing it for the completely wrong reason. In those real traditions, at least the ones that I've heard of that I respect, you've got a shaman, a master who is able to read auras, who's able to communicate with the ancestors. And when you walk in to the ritual, he'll be able to see in your aura whether or not you're supposed to do it or not. And if you're not supposed to do it, he's going to say, you out. You don't get to do this one. You get to watch. Here's a drum. Play a drum for them. You're not doing it. But anywhere you can go and pay money and anybody will give you ayahuasca or anything else, it's already been yanked out of its tradition. And you're some Westerner who has depression, or you have some other problem, and you think taking a drug is going to fix it, and you're treating it like medicine. Because the truth is that you don't need it. There are powerful practices that go far beyond what entheogens can do. You want to release DMT? I know some ways that are far more powerful and have zero side effect. And the truth is, all entheogens, whether it's ayahuasca or whether it's mushrooms or whether it's THC, they all do damage to the nervous system, to the brain, and to the nerves. And those of you who want to stand up and say no, it's medicine. I understand for some people it's been very healing, but there are people that have been permanently, completely fucked up because they went and did ayahuasca and didn't know what the hell they were doing. You don't need it. So let me just stop that euphemistic talk about that. Okay? You had a bad trip, so stop doing it. Again, you haven't said whether you're doing it or not, but just based on that, you say caught in a loop. You had a bad trip, man. That's all that is. And you need to stop. So this is what the 90-day challenge is about. If you don't know, you can go get Celestial Qigong. I would recommend looking at the lockdown package because I have it there. You can get a reading from me or from one of my apprentices and get a mantra ritual which will help you with that. You can do my Celestial Qigong. You can do the 90-day challenge. And if you want to get the really high-level stuff, if you want to have the benefit of getting completely blasted out of your mind as if you took the most intense entheogen, I'm going to start teaching some of that. I'm condensing and taking some of the stuff that I do, and we'll see. I'm trying to make sure that I teach it in the most effective manner and in the most safe manner. But I'm going to start teaching some really powerful stuff. If you want to know what that feels like, you can try that out. In the meantime, I would suggest doing Celestial Qigong and the 90-day challenge to get your body and your nervous system ready for the energy. And I would recommend that if you're doing any kind of chemicals like alcohol or THC or even nicotine, I would stop doing all those things and get your body prepared. If you want to do it, based on your question. Let me see if I got your question right. Where'd it go? I missed it. Did I miss a question? Bob, question. You said one NC you got to the point of accepting your emotions and acting only on the ones that in line with your orlog, then 0 point comes and then you have no more desires. Is desire for 0 point just another pill? Let's see, I didn't say that. You're putting words in my mouth. That's not what I said. What ends up happening is that you fulfill your desires. Then when you're at the 0 point stage, then you get a desire. But the desire is coming from the purest aspect of your soul, from your heart. So you don't become free of desires. It's that you now have a more focused experience. You have less desires because you've fulfilled them all. You've looked at all the things that block you from your true desires, so that means you have less. Doesn't mean you've gotten rid of them or anything like that, but it does mean you're out of desires. It means that the desires that come to you, you're going to be clear on how wonderful that is for you and how healing it is. Because when you operate from the desires of your soul, you are fulfilled and you help all of awareness come to a higher level of evolution. That's why you should live selfishly from your soul. That's what helps, when you do that, everybody benefits. And so this idea of, is this not a good desire or a good desire? You don't have those problems anymore when you're operating from 0 point. That's the idea. Have you heard the story of, no, that's for another video. Stop beating yourself up, Bob. Just do the exercise I gave you of trying to discover what your soul desire is and then go do it. If you do that, you'll end up at 0 point. Everybody will. Chloe, okay, you guys are talking to each other. Jameson, question. The African drumming you teach is available to learn from CD. I have not, as of yet, made any instructional videos, but you can go and listen to them. If you go to courses.thunderwizard.com, or on my YouTube channel. You can find African drumming on there, and you can just listen to it on there if you want to listen to it. You can also I have mantras that I chant to African drumming, which I really love. It's really powerful. But I'm not teaching it at the moment, but that is a good idea. I'll start looking into making a video, perhaps teaching it. That's not a bad idea. So let me write that down so I forget. Because actually I have somebody I can team up with who would love to help me make that video. Drumming instructional video. Okay. There's other stuff if you want to learn. Well, never mind. I will take that to heart. Okay, where are we? Dakota. So do me a favor and write questions so I don't miss it. Question above. All right. It doesn't work after the fact. Dakota Spruill, have you helped someone pursue Native American spirituality? Because that's my background and it feels like the culture has been taken away from us and I want to pursue further, but there isn't a clear path. I haven't, the only Native American spirituality I'm aware of is the same that everybody has access to. And unfortunately, a lot of it is nonsense. A lot of it is written by a bunch of white people pretending to be Native Americans. It's one reason I don't ever talk about it or teach it, because I've never been taught in that tradition. I do believe that there's a lot of similarity, so I don't teach that. I wish I could tell you where to go. I don't. My experience is this. Look, here was my experience. I'm now, part of what I'm doing is I'm living, among other things, I'm still a syncretist. I'm still doing all of the different things that I've learned and using it to understand my ethnic background, but I'm not limiting myself to my ethnic spiritual background. But the whole reason that got me to where I am now, where I understand, when I read, for instance, like the myth about Thor, the thunder god. So Thor is described as wearing a belt that doubles his power. He has his hammer, which is the thunder. And in order to pick up the hammer, people don't realize this, he has to wear a steel glove. He has to wear a steel glove in order to pick up the hammer. And then when he's got that, then he can throw his hammer, which is the lightning. Now that doesn't make any sense, because if you know anything about, metal and lightning, if you wear, that's not going to, if you try and pick up, a live wire with steel gloves, you're going to electrocute yourself. So why would he do that? It doesn't make any sense. But if you understand Qigong, which I learned in a completely different tradition, the Chinese tradition, then I understand exactly what he's saying. It makes perfect sense. If you see yogis and you see, like, even if you watch Kung Fu guys, they wear these sashes around their midsection, big, thick sashes around their midsection. That's not for looks. That's because the navel center is where all of the chi, or the life force energy, or the lightning energy, is stored. And so when you're working and you're doing, Kung Fu or, Qigong, you're working with this, you want to protect the adrenal glands and the kidneys and the navel, because that's what's generating all of the chi. So here are my ancestors, thousands and thousands of years ago, and as far as we know, they didn't practice Qigong or anything else. Turns out they did. But we don't know that because the Christians came and took that all away from us. So when you read about Thor, he wears this belt around his midsection, which doubles his power. And he has to put on the steel glove to pick up the lightning, his hammer. Well, here in the hands, you've got this thing called the Lao Gong point. The Lao Gong point comes from here, which dips down into the triple warmer in the navel center. The energy comes up here and out the hands. Why do you think Tai Chi is all about hands and it's all about energy? When you see the Hadoken, it's the palms. The guys are using their palms. It's the Lao Gong point, where huge amounts of energy come out of the hand. They're saying that you have to strengthen the Lao Gong point, that You have to open that up. Wearing the steel glove is a metaphor for opening up the Lao Gong point to release the life force energy, which is in the navel. And the belt doubles as power. It means that you have to do energy work to stimulate the adrenals and the kidneys and the navel center to release the energy that comes up from this and out here. The only way I would have known that is if I had learned that in other cultures. So, point for you is you say you're of native descent and you don't have access to it. Great. They know that. Your ancestors know that. Trust me. Your Native American ancestors are there watching you, and they will guide you wherever you need to go. So in the meantime, you go after whatever tradition is available. I mean, as far as I knew, there was nothing I could do to learn the tradition of my ancestors, so I had to take what was available to me, which was, Chinese, African, East Indian, Siberian. I didn't have access to Native Americans. If I had, I would have used that. So you use what's available, and your ancestors are going to guide you to where you need, and you'll end up having a better knowledge of it as a result. Because of all that other stuff, all I have to do is read Norse mythology, and I know exactly what they're talking about. I can see all of the teachings in there, and they're teaching you how to do qigong, and they're teaching you all kinds of things that we don't understand now, but they understood 2,000 years ago when the wizard sat there and talked about Thor. He would then explain what that meant about opening up the powers of the hands he knew exactly what it meant. So you'll find it. So follow what you're led to. If you're led to a path where you feel power, go do that. And then eventually your ancestors will guide you. Now, I know that for a fact because that's exactly what happened to me. After I had gotten to as far as I could get from my teacher, my Taoist teacher, and then the path was blocked between me and the Grand Master, and I couldn't go any further. The truth is, the things I thought he was going to teach, he didn't teach. So it wouldn't have helped me anyway. But, the path was blocked, and I took a walk. And I write this in my book. Read my book, The Thunder Wizard Path. And I write this in my book. I was taking a walk in the woods, and I was upset because I had been called to these paths, and wasn't my doing. And now the path was blocked for me, and I knew there was more that I had to learn. And so I said to whoever was there, because I didn't know who was there, I said, whoever's out there, I'm done. If you guys want me to do this path, then you gotta bring it to me, because I'm done trying banging my head against a brick wall. And then out of nowhere, I had this weird feeling, and I said, and if there's any ascended masters of my ethnic tradition that want to teach me, I'm open to learning. I don't even know why I said it. And the moment that I said that, there was just this charge in the air. And I felt a being, didn't see it, didn't hear a voice, but I felt a being very clearly say, "Are you sure?" Because if you say yes, then you are going to be responsible for what we show you. And I knew that because that's the way I talk to students who want to learn the spirit fighting. I sit them down and I say, "Are you sure you want to do this? Because if I show this to you, it's going to be more than you can possibly imagine, and you're going to go through all kinds of stuff, and you're going to be responsible for your behavior. And if you're not prepared for seeing the darkness in you and seeing the, and having, intense feelings, then don't do it." So I have to get them to say, "Yes, I'm prepared," and that puts me in a position I can teach them, because then they have to take my direction. So I knew that when that spirit was saying that to me, I knew exactly what was being told me, was that we've got some very powerful stuff, but you have to own that this is what you want, and you have to take responsibility for the power you're going to receive. And so I said, "Yes, I'm sure." And then then I felt this communication that said, "All right then, hang on, because here it comes." And then it was gone as soon as it was. And then it was just the birds, and and I was like, And then I didn't think much of it, And then all of a sudden, I just started getting these downloads, all this stuff. And I remember, there'd be time. I was married at the time, and I remember sitting in my kitchen, and my now ex-wife was there standing next to me, and I was like going, oh, that's why. So I was just getting these downloads. I was going, oh, that makes total sense. She's looking at me like, are you okay? It was just in a whole other world. So if you feel that you've got your ancestors wants to teach you something and there's nothing available right now, then it may be because you need to learn from another ethnic tradition. That's going to give you something. Because look, there's people around now that don't know what our ancestors did. For instance, the runes. The most powerful way to chant the runes is in the name. The name tells you how to do it. It gives you the technique. But people aren't going to know that because, Christianity has taken all that stuff away from us. There's no wizards teaching this secret stuff. And I teach people how to do it. How did I learn that? I learned it from a Taoist guy named Tao Hang Jing, who's been dead for a couple thousand years. But he tells you exactly how to chant the 5 element sounds, the 5 element breaths. He tells you exactly how to do it, and that's exactly what the runes are. The definition of the word runes is exactly how to chant them. A lot of people don't know that. I learned that from because I was training in Taoist stuff. And this brings us to the other thing, which is that if we're talking about spiritual power, we're talking about a science. So that science is the same in all traditions. At some point, everybody's doing the same stuff. Whether they're Native American or whether they're Taoist or whether they're African or whether they're ancient Norse shamans, they're all doing the same stuff. They may do it in a different way. The technique might be different. The symbolism might be different. But when you peel that stuff away, the actual techniques are exactly the same. So if you follow what you're being drawn towards, you'll be drawn to where you belong. Okay? And this is why I created this path. I've created this path for people who don't have a path, for people who don't know where they belong. And they don't know what their ethnic. I mean, there are people who are 5 or 6 different ethnicities. This is a path where I hope everybody can gain the power that they want. In fact, this again was probably 10 years ago, something like that. All of this stuff was happening, and I'm like, okay, so now I'm finally connecting to my ethnic heritage, and I don't understand that very much, but I've been working with these Taoist immortals, and I've been working with these, so I did a ritual, and I called them all to me, and I said, I want to synthesize all this, and I want to create a path for everybody. And I said, I want your permission to do that, because you didn't do that. Like 100 years ago, if you wanted to learn Taoist martial arts, good luck. The last thing they were going to do is teach somebody outside of their ethnic tradition. Native Americans now, and understandably so, they don't teach anybody outside of their own tribal affiliations. It's hard. Sometimes there's a lot of places you can't find it. So those days are coming to an end. And what's going to happen now, according to Hopi mythology, which I believe, is that we're all going to come together and come back and share our knowledge with each other. But I went and asked, because I'm sensitive to that kind of stuff, and I called them all and I asked. I said, do I have your permission to take all this knowledge and put it into a synthesis, where I can teach Norse runes and Taoist energy techniques and African drumming and Vedic mantra? Do I have your permission to do all that? And I won't tell you how, but the long story short, the answer was a definitive yes. That's my job. So you don't know what your job is. Your job may be to go learn a bunch of different stuff and bring it back to your ancestor, or to your people, and say, hey guys, because there's no shortage of Native American tribes who have been completely divorced from their own knowledge. They're going through the same thing that my ancestors went through in Europe. So you might be the person to bring it back to them. I've fantasized about doing that all the time, but that hasn't happened yet. It's not obviously not my place to do so. So maybe you're that person. What else? Dakota Spruill, yeah, to connect with you. Okay, I think I answered that. Jonathan Todd question. About 6 years ago, I already answered that. Raven Avich. No. Jonathan, what else? Where'd we go? What else? Okay. So yeah, that's an interesting story. I'll remember that. Jonathan Todd question regarding the mushrooms. I have not touched them since. Haha. I do not even smoke weed. I have not touched them since then. I do not even smoke weed. I was just a major catalyst in my journey. Okay, all right. Well then, good. We're on the same page. Jonathan Todd says, I'm Native American and I can attest to the fact that our culture is pretty much gone unless you know where to go. But it's hard to find and you need to be trusted. Yeah, that's what I mean. It's sad. So then go with what's available to you. That if you're drawn to that and you want to learn, go to where you're being drawn. There's no shortage of power. And there's no shortage of powerful teachings if you can find the right teacher, somebody who knows what they're talking about. And all you have to do is ask. That's all you have to do. You just, wherever you are, you call to the ancestors, whoever they are. And, for all you know, you might be one, I've obviously got ascended masters from multiple ethnic traditions that have chosen to teach me. So you may be chosen for that as well. So don't limit it, but just throw it out there and just go, whatever ancestors are out there, guide me to the traditions and the teachers to give me the knowledge that I'm destined to have, and you'll find it. And then just watch what happens. Trust me, just watch what happens. You'll end up in something that would have been impossible otherwise. You might want to do a ritual to your ancestors, and ask for a healing and a reconnection. It might be something that you can do just by, putting a bonfire or doing whatever. I don't know anything about Native American tradition, but just doing your best. They're there. They know. They know where you are. They see you. According to you, the closest thing would be Taoism, Zen Buddhism, Confucianism. So there you go. There's no shortage of that. Even I teach that. Juliana Hlavinkova. That's one heck of a name there. Question. Hi, does pranayama and Ashtanga yoga practice go together? I think you asked me this question, didn't you? Somebody asked me this question. Does pranayama and Ashtanga yoga practice go together with your 90-day challenge, or must I choose one or the other? I can't say definitively. I mean, pranayama is pranayama. I teach pranayama in the 90 days. So obviously pranayama goes with it. Pranayama just means breath work. Ashtanga yoga, if I understand Ashtanga yoga, you should be just fine, because I teach Kundalini, just some very simple Kundalini yoga stuff, which should be very similar. You should be fine. If you do it, the only thing to look out for is if you get too much heat or too much energy. If you get a headache, then maybe it's not a good idea, but, find out. I think you'll be okay. Only time will tell. Go check it out and find out. Lorena Greco, question, how can I learn to interpret mythology? Well, you have to go. How I learned to interpret mythology was by learning a bunch of other mythology in existing spiritual practice, where they teach a mythology and then give you a spiritual practice that teaches you about that. So you have to find somebody that does that. Joy is not optional. Question, what's your opinion on Sikhism and Waheguru? Well, Sikhism is Sikhism. I trained in Yogi Bhajan's Kundalini Yoga, so he had his own form of Sikhism. I like a lot of it. It's not necessarily my thing, but there's a lot of it I like. Waheguru is, I chanted Waheguru and different Waheguru mantras many, many, many times. It's beautiful. Waheguru is another way of calling Odin. What? You say? Woden. Waheguru. Wahe is often pronounced Wah. Wahguru or Waheguru. Wahe, as I understand it, is, according to my teacher, he called it indescribable ecstasy of wisdom. And guru means from light to dark. Wisdom. So Waheguru, you're saying the indescribable ecstasy of wisdom which transforms darkness into light. Right? Woden, the god Odin, his name is Woden. Woden comes from two words. Wod, which means shamanic ecstasy, and then the suffix en, which means made of. So Woden is he who consists of shamanic ecstasy. See what I mean? This is what I'm talking about. If you learn multiple traditions and you find where they come together, you find that when Sikhs are saying Waheguru, they are chanting Woden. What else? Jonathan Todd, question, is your book available for ebook like on Google Books? Jonathan Todd, you can go onto Amazon and type in my name. In fact, you can go to my website, one of my websites, michaelwilliamdenny.com, and you will get to my Amazon page where you'll see all of my books. You can get them there. I believe that you can get them on Kindle. I believe that's the case. Raymanovich, question. It seems to me that you have missed my question above. Maybe you didn't want to answer it, but I just wanted to point that out. I probably missed it. Why didn't you repeat it? So now you just threw that guilt on me and you didn't give me that question? This is why I tell people to write the word question, because I will miss it. So Raymanovich, which question of yours did I miss? Now you're forcing me to scroll up. Question, what to do when I try to follow my soul desire, but I'm constantly being distracted by unconscious resistance and things that give me some kind of satisfaction? Raymanovich, we've talked about this. First, you need a teacher. You need a teacher because a teacher is the person who's going to give you discipline. This is the person you're going to talk to. But you say you try to follow your soul desire. You either follow it or you don't. And I'm not convinced you know what your soul desire is. Maybe you do. If you are saying that you know what your soul desire is, but you're in conflict, it means that you're unconsciously trying to please somebody else. Because this is what happens. We come here for two reasons. First one is we came here to fulfill the desires of our soul. But we've also come here to work through karmic lessons. Karmic lessons erupt in the form of mom and dad want me to become a bricklayer, but I want to be a ballerina. If I be a ballerina, mom and dad won't love me. I think I'm supposed to do both. Or, I want to do that, but there's no money in it. Or maybe I should go to school first. And maybe that's you're in conflict over what your soul desire is. So the thing to do is when you know what you're supposed to do, you go do it. You want me to take away the difficulty and the fear and the all of the resistance? I can't do that. You just do it. You seem to think that if you can get rid of the negative feelings, then you'll be able to take action. So you don't understand that taking action, assumes that it's going to be difficult. That's why it's dying in battle. It didn't say, my ancestors said, if you make love to the beautiful girl who's standing there saying, please have sex with me. They said, no, go dying in battle. You're about to go into battle. And now you go to the general or whomever and you say, I'm going to wait until I'm not scared anymore. And because I'm having all this resistance. I mean, how do you go into battle when that big guy there with the sledgehammer wants to knock your head off? You just go. You just do it. You expect that you might die. How do you not feel uncomfortable? You don't. You feel uncomfortable. You're afraid. Just go do it. 90-day challenge. That's what the 90-day challenge is about. It's about to give you the energy to go do it. What to do? It's called discipline. So you have a discipline. This is what a meditative discipline is. Any discipline. This is what Kung Fu is about. Kung Fu, in fact, the word Kung Fu means discipline. It doesn't mean martial arts. It means discipline. And that's what yoga is all about. You get up every morning at 4:30 and you chant the things and you do your thing. This is what mantra ritual is all about. When you get a mantra from me, I tell you do it every day for 40 days, no matter what. That's all. You find some discipline. The discipline teaches you how to do things when you don't want to do them. And then that teaches you to go into life and you take action even if you are afraid and you don't want to do it. You do it anyway. See what else. Dakota Spruill question. What do you think of the myths about Thor, Odin, and Loki where they are portrayed as almost like best friends and partners instead of enemies? I like it. What do I think about it? I like it. The interesting one, Odin is seen as, Thor's father. So obviously they get along. Loki is the shadow side of Odin. And Loki and Thor do things together, even though Thor and Loki are at complete opposite ends of the spectrum. Thor represents the planet Jupiter and Loki represents Rahu, represents all the things associated with addiction and breaking the law and all that kind of stuff like that. And Thor represents the truth and following the true law of spirituality. Yet these guys are, they go off into battle together and they go off and do all these adventures together. And Odin and Loki are completely at odds with each other. Loki is the leader of the armies of destruction at the end of the world, and Odin leads the army of of his army that fights against the trolls and the demons and all that. But Odin and Loki are blood brothers, and the myth where Loki reveals all of the hypocrisy of the gods, and they get so angry that they tie him under the earth. He says to Odin, you said that you would never drink beer without me, that we're blood brothers. Why are you partying and you're not inviting me? What's going on? It means that Odin and Loki are the flip side of each other. Yuval Avalon, greetings. Would you say the human body carries the souls just as electron carries the energy yet is not the energy? So as energy powers the light bulb, the soul powers the something else? Would I say that? I don't know. I don't have a problem with that description of it. I know that the soul lives here. And those are all really good questions. I don't have a problem with that. I don't know that I think about it that intensely, but it's fine with me. If that works for you, I'm okay with that. What else? Maxim Sisquich 3, why you skipped my question? Because I didn't see it. You didn't write the word question, so I keep telling people you write the word question. If you look at other questions, you'll see question. That's what I'm looking for, because people come on here and drop comments and I scroll through them because I want to answer the questions. So I didn't answer your question because I didn't see it. What happens when you die? We've been talking about that this whole time. So go back and watch this video from the beginning, because I've been on for a long time now. I'm not going to repeat myself, but it will be archived, and you can probably rewind it right now and start it from the beginning. Short answer is you make the decision on where you're going to go next. Your soul decides where it wants to go next. What else? Is that it? That's it. Okay, no more questions. I'm done. I'm eating into my practice time, so I'm going to get off. All right, guys, that's it for me. Thank you so much for all of this. It's surprising to see all this people here in the middle of the night. I will remember the death facts. Here's what you need to know. Death is inevitable. The more you resist death, the faster it comes. When you take fearless actions, death has to stop trying to kill you and must watch as you live fearlessly. You only have one life in this body, so stop screwing around and do that thing that you want to do, because this is the only life you'll get to do it in this body. And you'll regret it if you don't do what you want. All right, guys, that's it. I'll see you guys later. Have a good one.